Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a close look at The Art of Thinking Clearly by Rolf Dobelli. Think of this as your shortcut, maybe, to understanding common thinking traps and, well, how to sidestep them.
Exactly. And Dobelli, he's interesting because he comes from a background as a novelist and entrepreneur, but got fascinated by cognitive psychology.
Right.
So he's kind of translating this complex research into, everyday language. His book isn't really a guide to perfect thinking. That's probably impossible.
Yeah, more like insurance.
Yeah, insurance against making major irrational mistakes.
Precisely. He's seen these biases play out. So our mission today, really, is to pull out the key actionable insights. We want to give you the tools to spot these, mental stumbles in your own life.
Whether it's at work, at home, just trying to figure things out.
And the useful thing is he doesn't just describe the biases.
No, he often gives practical tips, ways to maybe lessen their impact, like a troubleshooting guide for your own brain.
Okay, let's dive in then. Where do we start with thinking more clearly?
Well, a really fundamental one is survivorship bias. We see it everywhere, often without even noticing.
Right.
It's that tendency to focus on the success stories, the winners we see, and totally ignore the vast number of failures hidden underneath.
Yeah, like looking at successful tech startups and forgetting the thousands that crashed and burned. The key thing, I guess, is looking at the failures gives you a much more realistic picture, right?
Absolutely. You understand risk better, avoid just copying the winners who might have had hidden advantages or just got lucky.
So what does Dobelli suggest?
He suggests something quite powerful, actually. He says to regularly visit the graves of one's promising projects, investments, and careers.
Wow. Okay. So actively seek out the failures.
Yeah. It gives you a more balanced view, stops you being overly optimistic based just on who survived.
Makes sense. Learn from what didn't work. And he links this to Taleb's swimmer's body illusion, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. It's related.
For anyone who doesn't know Taleb, it's about confusing selection factors with results.
Exactly. Like you see swimmers with amazing bodies and assume swimming gave them that body.
But maybe they were just built for swimming in the first place.
Precisely. Or those cosmetic ads with stunning models. Buying the cream won't give you their genes,
Right. Did success come from effort, or did they have a head start? Now, building on that, confusing cause and effect. What about the clustering illusion?
Ah, yes. Seeing patterns where there's only randomness. My brain loves doing that.
Mine too. Tell me more.
Well, our minds are just pattern-finding machines, basically. We want to find order.
Even when it's not there.
Exactly. Dobelli gives some great examples, like Friedrich Jurgensen hearing voices in tape static, or that famous case of the Virgin Mary on toast.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Or Jesus on a tortilla. Wasn't there another one?
That's the one. The point is, our brains are so good at finding patterns, they sometimes invent them. Leads to false conclusions, superstitions.
Those aha moments that are just nothing, really. Like seeing shapes in clouds.
Pretty much. So Dobelli's advice here is crucial. When you think you see a pattern, first assumption, pure chance.
Okay.
And if it feels really significant, maybe you could even get a statistician to check it out properly. Don't just trust your gut feeling of a pattern.
Right. Pause before assigning meaning to coincidence. Okay, let's shift gears. Something more social. Reciprocity.
Ah, yes. This is a deep one. That human urge to return a favor.
Even if you didn't ask for it.
Especially if you didn't ask for it. Think about Hare Krishnas giving flowers in airports back in the day, or charities sending free address labels.
Oh, yeah, you get that little gift.
And suddenly you feel this pressure, right, to give something back. It feels almost automatic.
That it does.
Suppliers taking clients to games, supermarket samples. They're all tapping into reciprocity. Dobelli warns us, be careful with unsolicited gifts or favors.
Because they create that sense of obligation.
Exactly. You might agree to something you otherwise wouldn't.
It's subtle, but yeah, very powerful. Okay, what's next on Dobelli's hit list of thinking errors?
We absolutely have to talk about what he calls the mother of all misconceptions, confirmation bias.
Ah, the big one. Only seeing what fits what you already believe.
And ignoring anything that contradicts it. The key insight here is, it stops you seeing reality accurately. It just reinforces your existing views, even wrong ones.
Actively looking for what disproves your idea is actually the faster way to get closer to the truth, isn't it?
It really is. We just naturally interpret new stuff to fit our existing theories, and we conveniently overlook the challenging bits. Dobelli mentioned someone dieting who only steps on the scale after a good eating day.
Guilty. I think we all do this a bit. It's just easier, more comfortable.
It is. and it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So Dobelli's strategies are important. One is actively look for disconfirming evidence.
So don't just look for proof, you're right.
No, make a conscious effort to find arguments against your view. Find the data that contradicts it.
That sounds hard work, mentally.
It requires real effort, definitely. But it's key for clearer thinking. He also suggests writing down your beliefs, then actively trying to find evidence against them.
Like a self-debate.
Yeah. And he mentions Charles Darwin, who apparently made a point of writing down any observation that contradicted his theories immediately.
Why immediately?
Because he knew the brain tends to just forget or dismiss uncomfortable, contradictory information really quickly.
That's a great practical tip. Challenge yourself. And there's that 2-4-6 number experiment too, right? That shows how bad we are at trying to disprove our own ideas.
Exactly. Most people just try examples that fit their first guess about the rule instead of trying numbers that would break the rule. That's the confirmation bias in action.
And you see it everywhere, like executive teams only wanting data that supports their strategy, or vague predictions from astrologers.
Or even just how strongly people hold on to religious or philosophical beliefs despite counter-arguments.
So Dobelli's advice: listen for the word exception. Follow Darwin's lead. Consciously seek contradictions. Actively challenge yourself. Okay, moving in. Authority bias. We've all felt that pull, haven't we?
Oh, absolutely. Just blindly following authority figures, even if they're not really experts on the specific thing.
Right.
The key insight is respecting real expertise is good, obviously, but blind obedience stops critical thinking.
It's that respect for the title, the position. We just assume they know best.
We do. Dobelli points to crew resource management, CRM, in aviation as a great counterexample.
How does that work?
Well, CRM basically encourages everyone in the cockpit, regardless of rank, to speak up if they see a problem. It challenges that strict hierarchy for safety.
That's a brilliant example. Questioning authority actually improved safety.
Exactly. So Dobelli says when you're making a decision, think, which authorities might be influencing me? And then, critically evaluate their input. Don't just accept it.
And he mentions the symbols too, right? White coats, suits.
Yeah, the symbols of status that reinforce the bias. Being aware of them helps us notice when we might be deferring too easily.
Okay, covering a lot here. What's another big cognitive trap?
Let's talk about the contrast effect. This is all about how our perception is swayed by what came just before.
Context is everything.
Pretty much. The key insight is our judgments are relative, not absolute. Understanding that helps avoid skewed evaluations.
Give me an example.
Dobelli uses that classic story from Cialdini about the clothing store, Sid and Harry.
Oh, yeah.
So Harry's the tailor in the back, Sid's the salesman. Suit costs, say, $200. Harry yells out, "That one's $400, pretending to mishear. Sid then tells the customer, he says $200.
So the $200 sounds like a bargain after hearing $400.
Exactly. Even if $200 was maybe still a bit high, the contrast makes it seem way better. It's used all the time in pricing negotiation.
Clever. And a bit sneaky. So our sense of value is easily manipulated by comparison.
Totally. Dobelli even makes a funny point about dating. Says maybe don't always hang out with your supermodel friends if you're looking for a partner.
Why is that?
Because, by contrast, you might seem less attractive than you really are.
Huh. Okay, fair point. It shows how context shapes judgment. Right, let's move to availability bias. This feels linked to the clustering illusion somehow.
It is related, yeah. Both are mental shortcuts. But availability bias is specifically about relying on examples that just pop into our head easily.
The stuff that's readily available in memory.
Right. And the key thing is, what comes to mind easily isn't always the most accurate or typical information. Relying on it can skew how we see risks, how we make decisions.
I've definitely noticed this. Like after a big news story about something rare, people suddenly think it's common.
That's it exactly.
Yeah.
If we see lots of news about a plane crash, we might overestimate the risk of flying, even though it's statistically super safe.
While ignoring more common risks.
Yeah, like diabetes or heart disease, which are less dramatic maybe, so they don't stick in the mind as much. Dobelli calls it having an incorrect risk map in our heads.
And he uses that K-words example too, doesn't he?
Yeah, asking if more English words start with K or have K as the third letter. People start with K because those words are easier to recall.
Even though it's usually the other way around.
Often, yeah. So it's about what's easy to remember, not what's actually true or frequent. And this affects doctors choosing treatments they know well, consultants using familiar methods.
Even if something else might be better.
Right. Dobelli also mentions how repeating something, even if it's false, makes it feel more available and believable, like propaganda.
So what's the antidote?
His advice is crucial. Actively seek out different perspectives. Spend time with people who think differently, who have different experiences.
Their available information can balance out yours.
Exactly. It counters your potentially skewed view.
Okay, actively seeking diverse views. Got it. Now, another bias I find fascinating. Story bias. I mean, who doesn't love a good story?
We all do. Our brains are just wired for narrative. Story bias is our preference for information in story form, even if the story twists reality or leaves stuff out.
We like things to make sense, have a beginning, middle, end.
We need that coherent narrative, even for random chaos. The key insight is stories are powerful for communication, memory, but they can also oversimplify and mislead. Give us a false sense of understanding things.
It's how we make sense of the world, right?
Yeah. Dobelli imagines a Martian recording your life, just random events. But we weave it into a meaningful story, often imposing order where there isn't much.
Advertisers know this.
Oh, definitely. They craft compelling narratives around products rather than just listing facts. Google does it too.
So stories engage us, but can mislead. What does Dobelli suggest?
He has a few ideas. 1, pick stories apart. Ask what the teller's intention is, what might be left out.
Be critical of the narrative.
Yeah. Also, read old newspapers. See how events looked before hindsight created a neat story? And he suggests looking at your own life, maybe through old journals, as unplanned events, not some grand destiny.
Wow, disrupt your own personal narrative. That's interesting. And he warns stories can make us feel like we understand things better than we do.
Yeah, and that can lead to taking bigger risks because the story felt so clear and convincing, you missed the underlying uncertainty.
Okay, very relevant. Let's tackle hindsight bias, the I knew it all along effect.
Ugh, yes. So annoying when people do that.
But we probably all do it sometimes.
We do. The key insight is that hindsight makes past events seem way more predictable than they actually felt at the time. It distorts memory and makes it harder to learn properly from experience.
It's just so easy after the fact to say, well, obviously that was going to happen.
It really is. Dobelli tells a story about his great-uncle's diary during, I think, the German occupation of Paris. His uncle wrote predictions that were completely wrong.
But looking back now, the actual outcome seems inevitable.
Exactly. Hindsight makes us forget the uncertainty people felt in the moment. That makes us poor learners from history.
So how do we fight it? What's Dobelli's prescription?
Keep a journal. Write down your predictions about markets, politics, projects, whatever. Then go back later and compare them to what actually happened.
Ouch. Probably humbling.
Very likely. It forces you to see how wrong you often were. He also suggests reading primary historical sources, old newspapers again, to get that sense of real-time uncertainty.
Right. Remember how things actually felt before the ending was known? Okay, next up, the overconfidence effect. I feel like this one hits close to home for many of us.
Oh, absolutely. The key insight is simple. We systematically overestimate our own knowledge and abilities, and our forecasts. It leads to bad planning, taking too much risk.
Failing to see our limits.
Definitely. Dobelli mentions studies where people were asked to give a range for an answer they were 98% sure contained the truth. They were wrong way more than 2% of the time. Massively overconfident in their range.
Wow. We really think we know more than we do. And he says even pessimists tend to overrate themselves.
Yeah, even people generally pessimistic about the world still often overestimate their own specific knowledge or skills. It's deep-rooted.
So recognizing this is crucial for making better decisions. Acknowledging our limits helps.
It does. It encourages more realistic planning, maybe seeking more advice. Dobelli also talks about telling the difference between real knowledge and chauffeur knowledge.
Chauffeur knowledge.
Yeah, like Max Planck's chauffeur who heard the physics lecture so many times he could deliver it himself but couldn't answer any questions. Is knowing the script versus truly understanding.
Okay. Appearing knowledgeable versus actually being knowledgeable. How do we fight overconfidence then?
Be skeptical of predictions, especially confident ones. Look at the predictor's track record. Dobelli advises favoring pessimistic scenarios in your planning.
Plan for things to go worse than you expect.
Basically, yes. And learn to spot real experts. They're often the ones willing to say, I don't know.
That's a great sign, actually. Admitting ignorance. Okay, what about the illusion of control? Feeling like we're driving when we're just passengers.
Precisely. The key insight. We often think we can influence random events. Things we have absolutely no control over. Leads to wasted effort, maybe irrational behavior.
Like Lucky Charms.
Exactly. Or rituals before a game. Dobelli gives examples like the man who thought wearing a red hat kept giraffes away because he never saw any.
Or people wanting to pick their own lottery number.
Yeah. As if that changes the random odds. Casino gamblers rolling dice harder for high numbers, softer for low numbers, fans yelling at the TV.
Believing it helps their team, we like to feel in charge.
We really do. There was an experiment where people felt more control over a light turning on if they pressed the switch, even when it was totally random.
So what's the takeaway? How do we stop trying to control the uncontrollable?
Dobelli's advice is simple. Focus on what you can actually influence. Put your energy there, except the rest is often just chance.
Sounds like good advice for reducing stress, too. Okay, one last one for this deep dive. The incentive super response tendency. Bit of a mouthful.
It is, but the idea is pretty basic. People respond strongly to incentives. That's the key insight.
And sometimes in ways you didn't expect or want?
Exactly. That's the super response part. They'll go to great lengths, sometimes with weird side effects. Dobelli gives those classic examples, like the bounty on rats in Hanoi.
What happened there?
People started breeding rats to collect more bounties. Or paying people for finding Dead Sea Scroll fragments.
Led to them tearing up larger scrolls into smaller pieces.
Precisely. Or paying farmers for dinosaur bones in China, leading to fakes being made. Incentives drive behavior powerfully.
So the lesson is about designing incentives really carefully.
Critically important.
Yeah.
You have to think through not just the intended effect, but all the unintended ways people might react to get the reward. Get the incentives wrong, and you can get disaster.
Wow. This has been, well, quite the tour of our faulty thinking. It's almost overwhelming how many ways we can go wrong.
It can feel that way, yeah. But honestly, just recognizing these biases, becoming aware of them, that's the huge first step.
You can't eliminate them completely.
Probably not. But awareness is like that insurance policy we mentioned. It helps protect you against the really big self-inflicted mistakes in life and work.
So for you listening, maybe take a moment to think. Which of these biases pop up most often for you? In your decisions, your work, your life?
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Since we all seem to have these built-in thinking errors, how can we design things better? Our workplaces, our systems, even maybe our governments. How can we build environments that help lessen the impact of these biases for everyone, not just relying on individual awareness?
That's a big question, something to definitely mull over. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.